The girl just wanted to communicate with the director, hoping to secure a role in the performance, but unexpected strange events began to occur. From that point on, she faced various horrifying incidents every day. However, the girl's career was also on the rise. Perhaps this is the price demanded by the devil. The girl's name is Tilly. She was originally the star of the theater troupe. She was quite famous, but 6 months ago, during a performance, Tilly accidentally sprained her ankle. Even after 6 months of treatment, she still limped when she walked. According to the doctor's diagnosis, she may never be able to stand on stage again. This made Tilly feel extremely terrible, and she often needed to take a lot of tranquilizers, just to keep her emotions from completely breaking down. But this wasn't the only problem Tilly had to face, because 6 months of treatment left her in poverty. She had no money to pay rent, and her roommate was no longer kind to her. Under all this pressure, Tilly could only search for jobs everywhere, but in her condition, no theater troupe was willing to hire her. Even if some were willing to give her a chance, after seeing her terrible dancing, they would just send her back to wait for news. The huge gap from her past success made Tilly even more eager to recover her ankle. Therefore, she constantly tried various methods, even folk remedies, yet all she found was disappointment. What hurt Tilly even more was the deliberate harassment from those in the know. One day, she went to audition for a role with a new director, and the director was aware of Tilly's situation, but she was asked to perform a difficult maneuver. And furthermore, it was identical to the move that had caused Tilly's injury. Clearly, this was a humiliation, but she could only comply. Tilly performed the requested action over and over again, yet director Matthews remained unsatisfied. In the end, she nearly twisted her ankle again. Matthews seemed bored with this torment. Matthews proposed a new evaluation criterion, asking her to play the role of a pig from her hometown.
Sniff around in the mud, roll in the dirt, and wiggle your little tail.
Upon hearing this clearly insulting request, although Tilly needed the job, she did not intend to sell her dignity. Therefore, she refused Matthews. Not long after leaving the troupe, Tilly regretted her decision. Since he could have her perform, it was clear she still had a chance. In this conflicting emotional state, Tilly took a large dose of tranquilizers again, to let reason triumph over emotion. What was dignity compared to survival? Thus, Tilly found the apartment where Matthews lived, hoping to meet the director and have a conversation, perhaps to exchange for a chance to perform. But what she didn't expect was that there was a guard at the entrance, and she was an unannounced stranger. She couldn't enter the door at all, let alone meet Matthews. So, in this way, Tilly could only leave. However, at this moment, perhaps due to the large dosage of tranquilizers, she began to experience strange symptoms. She saw the guard's expression twisting, and her head felt heavy and dazed. Not long after leaving, Tilly started to stagger. Fortunately, an elderly couple helped her in time, so she didn't collapse directly on the street. When Tilly woke up again, she was already in the home of the elderly couple. The husband's name is Peter, and the wife's name is Melissa. They live in the same apartment as Matthews, and for some unknown reason, they express that they feel very fond of Tilly, and feel a strong sense of familiarity. They want to adopt her as their daughter, and are even willing to give her another room in the apartment to live in. Upon hearing such an offer, she thought she was dreaming, but when Tilly actually arrived at room 7A, she was awakened to the reality that everything was indeed real. Just yesterday she was down and out, and today she was the neighbor of a famous director. Although Tilly still had doubts in her heart, with the explanations from Peter and Melissa, she gradually lowered her guard. According to them, this apartment was originally just for investment. Since it was vacant, they thought it better to lend it to someone fated to have it. Moreover, there had been a girl living here before, but she had returned to her hometown. Otherwise, this good fortune wouldn't have come to Tilly. So, in this way, she successfully moved into the apartment. From that point on, good things began to happen gradually. First, Melissa heard about her situation, and she took the initiative to say that she could introduce Tilly to Matthews. After all, they were neighbors. When Tilly heard this good news, she agreed without hesitation. On the day of the meeting, Melissa did not show up. Only Matthews came alone. Although Tilly had doubts in her heart, she didn't pay too much attention to it. Later, the two drank and chatted, and their relationship gradually grew closer. For some unknown reason, Tilly, who usually doesn't get drunk, suddenly felt dizzy. During this time, she had a dream. Tilly saw herself as a big star, surrounded by handsome men dancing for her. She could do whatever she wanted. and she enjoyed this lifestyle immensely. However, in the blink of an eye, those dance partners suddenly vanished, leaving Tilly all alone, and her hands and feet were all tied to the bed. Just as she was puzzled, Tilly suddenly saw an extremely terrifying scene. Fear jolted Tilly awake from the dream. She secretly celebrated that it was just a dream. Little did she know, this was only the beginning of the strange occurrences. However, Tilly was very happy right now, because of the conversation from last night. She successfully received an offer from Matthews. After so many difficulties, Tilly could finally return to the stage. However, the good times didn't last long. Although Tilly returned to the stage, but due to her ankle injury, during rehearsals in the theater troupe, she was always ridiculed by Bonnie. Moreover, Tilly discovered that there were some abnormalities in her body. She had large red patches, randomly distributed all over her body. However, she couldn't remember any incidents where those areas had been injured. This left Tilly feeling very puzzled, but this feeling was quickly overshadowed by new joy. One day, Melissa introduced Tilly to a new neighbor, whose name was Gania. She lived next door to Tilly. Hearing about Tilly's ankle injury, Gania specially brought over some ointment. After all that has happened, Tilly had long since lost all hope, but out of politeness, she still applied some of the ointment on the spot. However, she didn't feel anything special. She simply accepted it politely. However, not long after, she encountered even more strange occurrences. First, she found herself in a dream riding an elevator, but when she opened the elevator doors, it was completely empty inside. Just as she was about to lean in and look, she saw an elevator cabin plummeting rapidly. This startled Tilly, and she realized it was just a dream. Little did she know it was a chain dream, because when she woke up, she found a white demon by her bedside. When she woke up this time, she was truly awake, but because of the previous dreams, Tilly felt a bit uneasy. She decided to get out of bed and walk around. At this moment, Tilly discovered that her ankle had truly healed completely. She was thrilled, and she performed a few signature moves. This light and agile feeling gave Tilly a renewed sense of confidence. However, during her joy, strange occurrences continued to happen. Soon after, at a gathering in the apartment, Matthews was discussing something in a closed room with several women, seemingly trying to avoid Tilly. This made her feel a bit uneasy inside. Even stranger was that Melissa, around the corner, was arguing with Gania about something, but upon seeing Tilly, they immediately fell silent. Just as she was puzzled, Peter walked in carrying a large box, claiming it was a gift for Tilly. It turned out to be a mink coat, and even an heirloom necklace. Tilly was stunned. She didn't know how to express herself, and she didn't even know how she had ended up back in the old shared apartment. She showed off the coat to her companions, but at this moment, Tilly saw in the mirror that a pair of hands reached out from the coat. This terrified her, so much so that for the next few days, she was not in a good state. She frequently saw various horrifying visions. Her condition was clearly abnormal. She went to the hospital alone for a diagnosis, only to find out that she was pregnant. Just as her career was starting to take off, being pregnant would send her back into a low point. It could even be worse than before. Therefore, Tilly planned to find a place to have an abortion. However, before she could act, she encountered more strange happenings. That night, when she returned home, she found the door was wide open. This made Tilly cautious. Fortunately, it was only Peter and Melissa, but for some reason, they already knew about her pregnancy, and they stated that Tilly only needed to give birth, and they would take care of the child. To prove that they could take care of the child, they took Tilly to a room, which was filled with baby supplies. It seemed they had long been prepared for a child to be born. Seeing such a bizarre situation, Tilly could only say she would consider it first. They didn't seem to intend to let her leave, and immediately presented an offer.
In return, we'd give you anything you want.
Yeah, anything in the world.
Upon hearing this, Tilly thought they were just boasting. Peter and Melissa continued to explain that they would make her the lead actress in the theater. Then she would become a famous movie star, and eventually, she would be a queen of film and television. Tilly was genuinely tempted. In this way, they reached an agreement. However, this verbal agreement, under the influence of demonic power, had transformed into a kind of rule. That night, Tilly began to have nightmares again. This made it hard for her to fall asleep. Just then, a noise came from outside her bedroom door. Tilly went out to check, but she didn't expect that Gania was standing outside. Before Tilly could say anything, she lunged at Tilly holding a pair of scissors. Fortunately, Tilly reacted quickly and managed to shut her out. But Gania was relentless. and tried to stab Tilly through the gap in the door. Such a brutal act was completely different from her previous demeanor. Just as Tilly was panicking and confused, the noise from outside suddenly stopped. She went outside to check, only to find that Gania was dead outside the door. The weapon was the pair of scissors. What on earth had happened? Tilly didn't have time to think, and she immediately called the police. When such an event occurred, it naturally alarmed Peter and Melissa. However, their reaction only raised more doubts for Tilly. When Melissa saw her friend dead, she showed no remorse at all. Instead, she claimed it was Gania's release. Tilly had saved Gania's life. This bizarre reasoning only intensified Tilly's unease. Once the police finished their investigation, she began to clean the damaged house. In the kitchen, she unexpectedly discovered a small door, which led directly to Gania's room. That was how she could appear outside Tilly's door at midnight. Tilly quickly scanned the area, and noticed a red book on the table. Tilly flipped through it, only to find the contents were obscure and difficult to understand, with only a few illustrations that felt very familiar, especially the image of the demon, which looked exactly like the one in her dreams. Just as she was about to study it, she heard a noise coming from outside. Tilly quickly returned to the kitchen with the book, and placed it carelessly into a box. Not long after, during a rehearsal at the theater, a strange event occurred. Bonnie, who had always bullied and mocked Tilly, suddenly had her joints bending at unnatural angles, as if some great force was forcibly breaking them. Although everyone in the theater was terrified and panicked, Tilly became the biggest beneficiary. Bonnie was originally the star of the play, and now, due to this incident, Tilly had to take over the leading role. However, fortune and misfortune are interdependent. In the brief time after becoming the lead, she noticed in the mirror that her abdomen was inexplicably bulging. It seemed like something was moving inside, but moments later, it returned to normal. This made her think back to the agreement she had made with Melissa and the others. Now, Tilly's heart was filled with anxiety. She quickly contacted a doctor to arrange for an abortion, but unexpectedly, the fetus seemed to be protected by some mysterious force. As the abortion doctor was about to approach, she was met with the same fate as Bonnie, having her fingers broken. Seeing this, Tilly had no choice but to give up. She returned to her apartment, and Melissa suddenly announced that she wanted to cut Tilly's hair. She claimed that Tilly would look best with short hair, and that it would suit her role as the current lead. Tilly didn't pay much attention to this. She simply returned to her room, and took out that book to study. By carefully flipping through it, she saw even more familiar content. This included an image of the heirloom necklace. Clearly, this item had great significance, and was likely related to the white demon. Before she could think too much, a voice from outside interrupted her thoughts. It was Melissa's voice. Tilly had completely lost trust in this woman. She first peered through the peephole, and later, when she opened the door, she didn't undo the security chain. Seeing this, Melissa didn't press further. She simply invited Tilly to come over for a visit. Then she closed the door behind her. But Tilly noticed that Melissa's expression was unnatural. Given all the strange occurrences lately, she decided it was best to leave this place of trouble. As for the terrifying mink coat and the necklace, Tilly didn't plan to take them. She left them behind in the apartment, only taking her original luggage with her. While packing her things, she accidentally found a shoe. It seemed to belong to the girl who lived there before. This further confirmed for Tilly that she should not stay. She quickly finished packing, and fled to the church across the street. Inside, the nun saw Tilly, and was so frightened she knelt down to pray. She claimed that a demon was about to descend upon the world, and Tilly learned about this matter, so she had to face it herself. So, as soon as she left the apartment, Tilly had no choice but to return once again. This time, Tilly took the eerie elevator directly to the basement of the apartment. Here, she met Matthews. He no longer intended to hide anything, claiming that they were all worshippers of Satan. Now, inside Tilly's belly was the coming son of Satan. Upon hearing this, she stabbed at Matthews with a knife. She thought this would eliminate the source of the demon, but just as she was about to escape, she realized that the manager had sealed the door. Peter and Melissa had also arrived, and Tilly suddenly understood. The entire apartment was a stronghold for Satan's followers. Seeing that she couldn't handle so many enemies, she chose to use the knife to kill the child in her womb. But just like with the abortion doctor, the knife in Tilly's hand couldn't come near her abdomen at all. Seeing this situation, Tilly suddenly thought of a plan. She pretended to compromise, agreeing to give birth to the son of Satan. The followers greatly appreciated this perceptive girl, and they held a celebratory feast. At this moment, Tilly expressed her desire to perform a dance, but when they weren't paying attention, she quietly approached the window. As the final song concluded, Tilly leaped down, attempting to take the son of Satan with her. However, Tilly didn't realize that Peter and Melissa were watching her body, with satisfied smiles on their faces. The film ends here. Apartment 7A is the latest horror film, and a prequel to the classic horror film, Rosemary's Baby, but because the time gap is so long, there have been countless similar works in between, that upon watching it, there wasn't the same sense of astonishment as before. In addition, over the years, various demonic horror images have become increasingly bizarre. The ones in this film are actually not that terrifying. Overall, it is still a passable horror film. If you enjoy nostalgic classics, this is a pretty good choice. If you like my channel, please give me a subscription.